Guys, good morning. It is fantastic to see you as always, and I am incredibly excited to talk to you about another spiritual habit in our spiritual habit series. And just as a quick reminder for this morning, I'm going to reread to you what a spiritual habit is. So as it was defined a few weeks ago, a spiritual habit is carving out time and space to pay attention to and respond to the ongoing work of God in our lives. So carving out time and space to pay attention to and respond to the ongoing work of God in our lives. And it so clearly talks about in Matthew's Gospel in Matthew 11, Jesus says, "My yoke is easy and my burden is light." But I don't know about you, but there have been many times in my life where the yoke has not felt easy and the burden has in fact not felt very light at all. And for me, when I was in Melbourne in 2018 doing some of my discipleship program, as part of that time there was a mentoring session that I had. And in this mentoring session, my mentor could see that I was struggling and he's like, "Matt, what's going on?" And I was saying that I was really struggling with the morning Bible devotion that I had to do. The Bible devotion that was part of my course. And I said, "I don't like it. It feels so stale. I don't want to do it." And so he gave me homework. And his homework was, I give you permission. In fact, I'm commanding you to not hang out with God in the morning. You're actually not allowed to do the Bible readings. And when I first heard that, I was like, this is too good to be true. I was like, surely that's not the case. And so for the first 3 days of that week, I was loving life. I got an extra half an hour to sleep in. I felt so refreshed. And I was like, why not make this a 2-week assignment? This is a great piece of homework. And then it got to about the end of day 3, start of day 4, and this intense guilt came upon me. And that just built and built and built. And I realized I was feeling so guilty because it wasn't the Bible reading stuff, but it was actually that I didn't want to spend time with God. And actually for me, I'd really struggled with that. I'm like, I want to spend time with God, but it doesn't feel light, and it most certainly does not feel easy. It just feels like one extra thing to do. And so what I'm so excited about talking to you guys today is a spiritual habit that truly has changed my life, and it's something that is definitely not one more thing that you have to do. It's one more thing that I am so excited to do. And so today what we'll be speaking about is on the topic of transitions, or the spiritual habit of pausing or transitions. And so what is a transition? So quickly to revisit our definition of a habit, so it's carving out time and space to pay attention to and respond to the ongoing work of God in our lives. So that's our definition for a habit. So for a transition, it's similar to that, but it's carving out time and space to be still and give everything over to God. So it's carving out time and space to be still and give everything over to God. And this concept might be new to you. You might be like, I don't know if I recognize that in the Bible, but there's a very clear example of this in Mark chapter 6, and that's what we're going to be focusing on predominantly this morning. So I'm going to read it to you in Mark 6, verse 6 and 7. And it says, "Then Jesus went around teaching from village to village, calling the 12 disciples to him. He began to send them out 2 by 2 and gave them authority over impure spirits." Let's pull back for a second. What's going on here? Jesus sends out the 12 disciples on their first ever missions trip. So I don't know if you knew this, but about roughly 12 months into Jesus' 3-year ministry on earth, he sent the 12 out in groups of 2 to proclaim the gospel, to heal the sick, to cleanse the lepers, did a whole bunch of things, and he sent them out to do that. And I don't know if you've ever been on a missions trip. I've never been on one sent out by the actual Jesus, but I've been on a couple missions trip myself. And I can tell you 2 things for sure. One, God well and truly shows up and it's awesome. But the second one is that they are so tiring that by the time you get to the end, you feel like you need a week holiday. They're so exhausting, but they're really awesome. And so that's where these guys are. They've just come back. And we're going to jump into the next chunk. So in verse 30 now, and it says, "The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they had done and taught. Then, because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." So they all went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. But many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. Did you see what just happened there? The disciples didn't get a break at all. So they've come back from this missions trip. They're incredibly tired and they come to Jesus and there's still so many people there coming and going. It says they didn't even have a chance to eat. Like these guys are seriously busy. And so Jesus says to them, let's get out of here. Let's get on a boat and leave and go somewhere quiet and get away from all of this. But when they get on the boat, they are instantly recognized. And so by the time they get to the other side, they are swarmed by this crowd. And Jesus feels deep compassion for them. They're so lost. And so he preaches again. And I don't know if you knew this, but the story that follows this story, literally the next verse, is Jesus feeding the 5,000. So they've gone from this big missions trip to coming home. They're just being swamped like celebrities. They get on a boat to go to a quiet place. And then there's about a 20,000 person conference. It's this huge, huge, huge deal. And they have no chance to rest at all, it seems. And so where it becomes a bit misleading, or what we might read into this, is it seems like Jesus has promised something that he didn't deliver on. Because it says, come to me to a quiet place to get some rest. But actually, that's only because we think the rest is the destination. So we think that the rest means to get on the boat to go to the other side, and the other side being the rest. But what's really, really interesting is that when Jesus is talking about this rest, he is actually not talking about the destination. He is talking about the boat ride with him. I'll say that again. He's not talking about getting to the other side of the lake. Jesus is outside time. He knows that there's a crowd waiting there for them, and he is excited to teach them and to feed them and love on them. So the only gap that they have is this boat ride. And when it's a boat ride with Jesus, it is enough. And so Jesus offers his disciples this invitation not to rest at the end of all the busy things, but in between the busy things. And that is where this idea of transitions comes into play. And so I don't know about you, but this is very, very relatable to me. That actually in my life and in my context, I go from appointment to meeting, to work, to the gym, to dinner, to a family event, to a Bible study, and it just goes on and on and on and on. And it's like, God, I want to hang out with you, but I just don't have time to get to a solitary place. And that's a real place for a lot of people in the 21st century. Our lives are so busy that we don't have time for these hour blocks with God. And so what the beauty of transitions is it's creating these little pockets. It's these little moments where we can hang out with God for just 5 to 10 minutes and let everything go. It's 5 to 10 minutes to sit in Jesus' presence and just let everything go. And so biblically speaking, where does this idea come from? Obviously, we've just looked at it in that verse, but I want to show you a few other passages where this idea of sitting with God and letting go comes from. A really key one being in 1 Peter 5 verse 7, and it says, "Give all your worries and cares to God, for he cares about you." Give all your worries and cares to God, for he cares about you. I don't know about you, but that's a lot to give. He says all of your worries and all of your cares. A genuine question for you, when was the last time that you gave God everything? When was the last time that you gave God all of your worries and all of your cares? And I don't mean simply just stopping. I mean that you've stopped and your mind is also not ruminating over things. You're not stressing about things. You're not worrying about things. That when Apostle Peter wrote this, I genuinely don't think he was being dramatic. I think he meant give everything to God. But not just give everything to God, say when your life falls apart, but giving everything to God consistently in little chunks every day. Because it's too big to go 3 months without giving everything to God. That actually the human soul was not meant to carry as much as we carry. That actually at the end of the day, we did not die for our own sins. That actually we're not carrying the weight of the world. That's actually Jesus' responsibility. And often we can get so caught up in doing a lot of really good things, like we're serving on lunch teams or like in ministry context or the kids, whatever that thing is, and we're always doing things. And that's great. And I'm glad that we do those things and get to love people that way. But this is supposed to be a time where we can just let go of everything and give all the worries and all the cares and for nothing to be expected of us. And actually just to know that God is God. Which leads me on to the second one, which is from Psalm 46 in verse 10, where it says, "Be still and know that I am God." When was the last time that you were genuinely still and just knew that God was in control? And I don't mean up here, I mean a deep sense in here of like, you know what? I've got a big work project coming up and a big Christmas event and it's someone's birthday that I'm supposed to organize and I haven't bought that cake and the grandkids need this from me and my spouse needs this from me. But despite all of that, I'm just going to be still and know that God has everything under control. When was the last time you did that? When was the last time that you did that? And finally, it's the verse we've just read, but in Mark 6:31, where it says, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place to get some rest." So this is a fantastic example of how transitions play out in our lives. And what I want to do today is break this verse down and give 4 practical steps on how to best transition with Jesus. So the first one, in the words, "come with me," is simply time with Jesus. This is pretty straightforward, but it's time with Jesus. So it's not a second lunch break or something where you can scroll on your phone or check emails. It's time set aside to just be with Jesus. Point number 2, where it says by yourself. This might seem like also a funny one, but it's time by yourself. And if you're an introvert, you're going to find this one pretty easy, I'm guessing. But if you're an extrovert, you might struggle with this. Like for me, most of my favorite spiritual habits are things like being in a sermon or corporate worship or a Bible study, like things with a group of people. But actually this habit is definitely intentionally on your own. It's something where it's not connecting with other people. It's a chance to just be selfish with God, to have all the other people in your life disappear just for 5 or 10 minutes and just to spend time with your Heavenly Father. On to point number 3, where it says to a quiet place. So point number 3 being time without distractions. So it's coming to a place that is free of distraction. So this doesn't have to be literally quiet, because often we're in like office settings or settings where there's just a lot of traffic and noise and just busyness. But it's a place where you know you won't be disturbed. So for me, I'm quite brutal about this now, that I will actually shut my office door, put in noise-canceling headphones and play super soothing music so that I can't hear anything. And if for some reason I suspect that day that people are going to bother me in my office, I'll leave the office. I'll actually go into my car or go for a walk or just something where I can well and truly be alone with my dad. And the 4th point, it says to get some rest. And this is the time to let go. And you might be thinking, where do you get letting go from get some rest? And that is a great question. And the reason being that it is so easy to rest without actually resting. So it's so easy to stop, but actually in your soul, you're not really resting. You're not really being fulfilled. And so for me, to tell you a quick story, that in 2020, right as COVID was hitting, everything in my life, as with I'm assuming most people, shut down. So all of my commitments at work, all of my commitments with youth ministry and young adults ministry and commitments on Sundays, all of that when I was in Canberra basically all shut down. And my 50 plus hour work weeks really went to about 15 to 20 hours. And so I now suddenly have all of this time to rest. I have all this time where I'm not required to work, and you think it would be really soothing, but actually it wasn't. That actually for me, even though I had stopped working, I wasn't resting. That I had all this extra time, but my mind was so consumed with thoughts about work. My mind was so consumed about the youth group's going to fall apart. I can't meet in person. These kids are going to walk away from their faith. God, it's on me to make it happen. Or the same thought with the young adults group. I was like, we only just started this group. There's no momentum. I got to keep it going, but people don't want to join in online and all this stuff. And I was so unable to just be still and know that God was God. And so I really, in a difficult way, I had to learn this. That actually for me, it was not just resting in terms of stopping, but it was resting in terms of letting go. And so practically, what does that mean to let go? I've got 3 points for you for that. It is to know, to give, and to be, or knowing, giving, and being. And so this is a chance for you to simply to know that Jesus' yoke is easy and his burden is light. So as I talked about earlier, it's a chance to know that actually nothing is required of you in this moment. That actually it's okay, the world won't fall apart without you. You can just sit and be still. And the second point is to give, and you are giving all of your worries and cares to God. Depending on the situation, there's one of two things that you could do. If you're someone that is happy just to sit and be still, that often is enough. But if you're someone like me, I have an incredibly active mind, and I sit still to spend time with God, and all of a sudden I remember an email I was supposed to send, and someone I was supposed to call, and something I was supposed to buy from the shops. And all of a sudden, as I'm still, all my worries and cares actually come to the surface. And so what I will usually do is sit alone by myself for 10 minutes, but the first 2 to 3 minutes is actually just journaling out everything. So it's giving all of the tasks I have to do, all the things on my mind, all the people I'm worrying about, and it's just a chance to actively brain dump, like just pour all of it out onto paper and give it all to God. And there's something quite therapeutic about getting it out of your mind and onto a piece of paper. It's a really good practice. So give and giving all your worries to God. And the final one is to be. And ultimately this time is about being still and knowing that God is God and that He is the author and creator and sustainer of the world and not you. And this be one really is the most important thing, because technically knowing is still requiring something of you and giving is still requiring something of you. And so the knowing and the giving is really to set up a safe space where you can just be, where you can just be with God and let Him love on you. And it doesn't necessarily mean that God has to speak to you. I taught this to someone a little while ago, and they were getting so frustrated because they were like, God didn't talk to me in this time. I think I did it wrong. It's like, no, it's not about God talking words to you. It's about sitting and relaxing and just knowing that nothing is required of you. And it might sound really foreign, but it is such a refreshing habit. And in fact, now it is a proper discipline for me. It's something that for me between 2 and 2:15 every single work day after my lunch break, I'll carve out a 15-minute window to just sit and to be still and know that God is God. So I'm going to quickly run through everything we've looked at. So it says in Mark 6:31, where it says, come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. So it's those 4 points we talked about. It's time with Jesus, it's time by yourself, it's time without distraction, and it's simply time to let go. And finally, it's the know, the give, and the be. So it's knowing that Jesus' yoke is easy and his burden is light. It's giving all your worries and cares to God, and it is being still and knowing that God is God and He carries the weight of the world and not us. And so I really challenge you guys. I've got some homework. And so my homework for you is to find a consistent time in your day. So either first thing after lunch, or maybe it's the last thing in your day before you go home, or whatever is a good time frame for you. But for you to try those three things where you know in your heart that the yoke is easy, you give all your worries and cares to God. So write that down if that's helpful, and then just be still and know that God is God, even just for 5 minutes. That's my strong encouragement for you guys, and I cannot wait to hear how you go. And please, after you've tried it, please come and tell me. I would love to hear how it goes for you. God bless, and I can't wait to see you guys next time. See you later.